Namaskar, Salam Alaikum and Walakam. Welcome to this special program of Gandhi Katha, an important activity of commemorating 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi nationally and internationally. Gandhi Katha program was approved at the highest level in India by the National Committee of India headed by the President and the Executive Committee headed by the Prime Minister. Embassy of India in Abidjan also organized many official public events to commemorate the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi, both in Cote d'Ivoire and in Liberia, with the support from the governments of Cote d'Ivoire and Liberia, including the release of commemorative postal stamp of Gandhi at 150 in both countries. There were also many other events organized with the active support of community members. Today, we are fortunate to have Ms. Sevagram Radhakrishna, who is the founder of Gandhi Forum for Ethical Corporate Governance. She has been delivering several lectures spreading Mahatma Gandhi's ideology of universal peace and non-violence, humanism and leadership for the past 3 decades in India and abroad. Mahatma Gandhi did not visit Cote d'Ivoire, but his non-violent movement has influenced few people even in this country, one of whom have established a school called Gandhi School in Abidjan. Mahatma Gandhi's ideology of non-violence and peace are positive forces which can guide humans to move away from darkness towards light. Ms. Sevagram would now take us through the life and message of Mahatma Gandhiji and its relevance in the contemporary world. Unfortunately, we are organizing this event online due to the coronavirus pandemic, but I am sure all of us would be more educated today after this short program with Ms. Sevagram. With these few words, I would like to once again thank Ms. Sevagram for taking out his time and sharing the life and message of Bapuji with all of us. Thank you. Jai.
Thank you, Ambassador Shri Sailas Tangalji, for your kind message and the support. Namaskar and welcome to the Gandhi Katha, story of Mahatma Gandhi, narrated by me. I express my deepest gratitude to the Embassy of India in Abidjan in Cote d'Ivoire for hosting Gandhi Katha amidst these challenging times to learn from Gandhiji's philosophy of truth, non-violence and purity of means, his environmental credo, his practices of health and wellness of body, mind and spirit for coping up and staying safe physically, mentally, emotionally and spiritually during the pandemic which has affected the entire humanity. India and Cote d'Ivoire have traditionally enjoyed cordial and friendly relations and share an extraordinary convergence of values and aspirations. Bilateral visits at the highest level have contributed significantly in strengthening the bonds of friendship and cooperation between our two countries, which shares the highest ideals of democracy. I pay my respects to the leading lights of Cote d'Ivoire, my greetings to the people of Cote d'Ivoire, the Indian community, and to all those who have joined me online today. Mahatma Gandhi won independence for us, but he was equally concerned about the freedom of the African people. There are numerous facts and instances that highlight just how much of an impact Mahatma Gandhi's passive resistance campaigns in South Africa and India had in other African nations' freedom movements. I pay my deepest gratitude to everyone in Cote d'Ivoire for the love and respect they have shown to the father of our nation. We feel truly privileged that his teachings continue to resonate among your people and your leaders. Mr. Daikait, the founder of the Gandhi School in Abidjan and the management in the well-known group Scolaire Gandhi, wrote in Gandhi Anthology in 2019, and I quote, as a non-violence figure, Gandhi has offered a model to all people living in oppression far beyond India. He proposes that a different way to non-violence does not solve anything. Mahatma Gandhi left us a rich intellectual legacy in the search for happiness. The aim of his teachings is to overcome social justice or social injustice and discrimination without resorting to violence. Gandhiji had begun his protest journey in South Africa, making an indelible mark on the times and the world history. Many great African countries such as South Africa, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Zambia, Kenya, and Ghana got freedom from the European colonial regimes after a long struggle, and the freedom movement which followed the path was shown by Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhian ways had steeped deeply among them and percolated down to the people in the African countries. Mahatma Gandhi drew inspiration not only from his experience in South Africa, but also from his reading of the history of Africa as a whole. Thus, we observe that during the entire non-violent freedom struggle of Gandhiji in India, Africa was dominant in his mind as his early struggle for equality was initiated in Africa. Though diverse tactics would be available for adoption in West Africa as in other parts of Africa, Gandhi's struggle in South Africa and in India continued to inspire activists and thinkers in and from the continent. Gandhi Katha is based on the ancient Indian oral tradition of Katha or storytelling with hymns and narrations. I have given talks and Gandhi Katha in 135 countries hosted by the Indian missions. In all the countries, people have great reverence and respect for Mahatma Gandhi. Many have been inspired by him to take up the cudgels against injustice through non-violence. Others have followed his environmental credo, and still others have been deeply touched by his simple spiritual life. The new generation is eager to understand more about the greatest man of the last century who made such a huge impact on humanity and inspired many world leaders. Madiba, Nelson Mandela, who was often dubbed as the Gandhi of South Africa, had strong Indian connections and striking similarities with India's father of the nation. The anti apartheid icon Madiba had said, and I quote, the Mahatma is an integral part of our history because it is here that he first experimented with truth. It is here that he demonstrated his characteristic firmness in pursuit of justice. It is here that he developed Satyagraha as a philosophy and a method of struggle. Even after 7 decades have gone by since Gandhiji passed on, in every part of the world, his relevance is felt as strongly as ever before, and his visions and actions are of an enduring significance for all times and places. His approach to life was holistic and cannot be divided into watertight compartments of social, religious, political, personal life. Gandhiji stands out as the champion not only of political democracy, but also of economic and spiritual democracy in today's world. Gandhiji believed that moral degeneration is the root cause of all evils, including conflicts. This explains his lifelong crusade of attainment of moral values such as truthfulness, non-violence, purity of means, respect, love, self-control, forgiveness, friendliness, compassion, mercy, and so on. For Gandhiji, the principle of satyagraha or non-violent resistance and civil disobedience was by non-cooperation with evil through the moral values of love force, truth force, and soul force. For him, the consideration for the sufferings of fellow human beings was of paramount importance. His belief and actions were that social change for establishing justice and dignity of humans is both less harmful and more sustainable when achieved by non-violent means. His legacy of satyagraha is widely recognized the world over and seen in many movements for civil rights nowadays. Mahatma Gandhi's environmental practices were based on conservation of natural resources, which were often misused and overused for the sake of industrial development. Gandhiji had warned about the unsustainability on the global scale a century ago. Greed will be the main reason for the environmental degradation and the ecological crisis, he had declared as the first environmentalist. Further, Gandhiji had said, the earth, the air, the land, and the water are not an inheritance from our forefathers, but on loan from our children. So we have to hand it over to them as it was handed over to us. Equality for women within the society was a principle Gandhiji passionately believed in. His vision of Sarvodaya, the welfare of all, becomes very relevant in the crisis of internally displaced people and migrants, and he may well have kept in mind the very basic unit of human organization, a village or a county. His vision of Gram Swaraj, which is a self reliant, independent, self governed village built on the premises of sustainable development and growth, is the need of the hour. Now I'll play one hymn in Hindi with English subtitles which elaborates on Gandhiji's definition of truth as having harmony between thoughts, words, and deeds.
मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तुगो मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तुगो जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तुगो जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तुगो ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर होगा सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर होगा मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तुगो मन वाणी कर्म में सत्य ही तुगो जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तुगो जीवन में मंगल के द्वार दे तुगो ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान ज्ञान कर्म भक्ति का हो सम्यक विधान सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर होगा सत्य शिव सुंदर का सुमधुर होगा.
According to my understanding, Mahatma Gandhi's life was an epic of faith and endeavor. His faith was in truth, the ultimate reality of truth, and he endeavored to attain it through nonviolence throughout his life, till the very last breath. Gandhiji's adherence to truth, nonviolence, and purity of means has inspired me to give Gandhi Katha so that people can put their hearts into understanding Gandhiji, get inspired to learn from his extraordinary ethical and moral leadership, his simple spiritual life, revolutionary thoughts, actions, his lifelong service to humanity against all forms of injustice, and how he continues to inspire people in all the parts of the globe at all times and in all ages. Perhaps the greatest source of strength for Gandhiji was in his faith in God. Truth was the deepest and the most complete form of God. The faith gave him the constant awareness that he was to be nothing but an instrument in his hands. He was to go wherever he was led. For him, the guidance of God constituted two things. One, he had to walk on the path enlightened by truth that was available to him in whatever measures and form. Two, he had to constantly gaze inwards and find inspiration through self-introspection, self-examination, and self-purification by repeated questioning. And that question was, Ko aham, who am I, and what is the real purpose of my life? This question has been asked in our ancient Indian civilization since the past 5,000 years. The answer came to Gandhiji that the real purpose of life was to serve others. The deeper the faith, the greater was the endeavor for Gandhiji. He said truth is God. Faith in truth led Mahatma Gandhi to two other realizations. If God is omnipresent, then truth is omnipresent too. If each human being were an aspect of God, then each person is capable of truth, of being good and doing good to others. The second realization was that in spite of all the upheavals in the history of humankind, humanity will only progress in an auspicious direction because truth, that is God, is only interested in the welfare of its creation. His endeavor throughout his life was devoted to the search of that element of truth, to awaken it and to nurture it. This is why he could feel oneness with everyone. For most of us, this realization does not set in easily, but because of this understanding, Gandhiji had no enemies. He did not want to settle scores with anyone, and he did not want to take any revenge. He merely wanted to extend his love, compassion, and respect to everyone. He respected individuals as individuals without attaching labels. Romeo Rolla, the famous French writer and pacifist who won the Nobel Prize for Literature, wrote the biography of Mahatma Gandhi in 1924. Gandhiji had gone to Switzerland to meet him in 1931 on his way back from London after attending the Second Roundtable Conference. Later on, Rolla wrote to his American friend, and I quote, "This little man is so fragile in appearance, is tireless, and fatigue is a word that does not exist in his vocabulary. He could calmly answer for hours without a muscle of face twitching. His mind proceeds through successive experiments into action, and he follows a straight line, but he never stops." Gandhiji was always touched by the pain of others. This ability to feel the pain of others led him to compassion or karuna. Compassion, coupled with daya, pity, led to the spirit of service or seva. Gandhiji's first and foremost inner calling was to alleviate the sufferings of others. He had a keen desire to restore the dignity of all human beings. The greatest degree of inner tranquility came to Gandhiji from the development of love and compassion, non-attachment and non-possession. The more we care for the happiness of others, the greater our sense of well-being becomes. Cultivating a close, warm hearted feeling for others automatically puts the mind at ease. This helps remove whatever fears or insecurities we may have and gives us the strength to cope up with any obstacles we encounter. It is the ultimate source of success in life. Gandhiji's example demonstrates that so long as we live in this world, we are bound to encounter challenges and problems. Even during any difficult circumstances, Gandhiji did not lose hope and become discouraged. He faced the challenges with the understanding that it was not just him who was undergoing difficulties, but everyone was undergoing suffering. This realistic perspective increased his determination and capacity to overcome troubles. Armed with this attitude, for him each new obstacle became yet another valuable opportunity to improve and overcome challenges. So he became more compassionate and developed both genuine sympathy for others' suffering and the will to help remove their pain. Gandhiji believed that the person who can control his emotions, his fear, his desire for revenge and violence will win every single time. So Gandhiji challenged all people to develop their courage and compassion in their day-to-day life. He was certain that it was his duty to alleviate suffering. His heart was so full of compassion and he took full responsibility for his actions. He was extremely conscious of his self-respect but was willing to disregard personal insults in the interest of the community. He possessed limitless patience and discernment. Today we have a unique opportunity to take the lead, open a new page in human history by learning from Gandhiji to address the challenges. It is because our own human existence is so dependent on the help of others that our need for love and compassion lays at the very foundation of our existence. Therefore, we need a genuine sense of responsibility and a sincere concern for the welfare of others. Albert Einstein, the greatest scientist of the first half of the 20th century, had called Mahatma Gandhi as the supreme practical leader for change, and listening to his voice.
I believe that Gandhi's views were the most enlightened of all the political men in our time. We should strive to do things in his spirit, not to use violence in fighting for our cause, but by non-participation in anything you believe is evil.
Mahatma Gandhi is the most powerful visionary and a practical idealist from the first half of the last century, whose life is a role model for us all. But the effort has to begin from a point where you're standing. That is what made all Mahatma Gandhi's idealist actions practical, and he can be truly called a man of action. But it does not only mean he was very busy. What we mean is the action of putting ideas and beliefs into practice more than anything else was the driving force in his life. The answer for Mahatma Gandhi was always found in action. He had said, an ounce of practice is worth more than tons of preaching. In my opinion, Mahatma Gandhi's life left the most powerful and strong imprint on the humanity of the world. He had said, my life is my message. John Haynes Holmes was a pacifist, an anti-war activist, and the founder of the American Civil Liberties Union. He had met Gandhiji in London in 1931 and later in Delhi in 1947. He found Mahatma Gandhi's presence, those bright eyes shining through his spectacles, his voice so clear and yet so gentle, his whole presence so simple and yet so strong. He said, and I quote, I believe that he is unquestionably the greatest man living in the world today and one of the greatest men who has ever lived. When I think of Gandhi, I think of Jesus Christ. I will play the Gandhi Katha hymn in Hindi about Gandhiji's philosophy of truth, non-violence, and purity of means that combine together in the form of Satyagraha.
Lagire lagan, satya ahimsa mein man mera magan, satya ahimsa mein man mera magan. Lagire lagan, satya ahimsa mein man mera magan, satya ahimsa mein man mera magan. अहिंसा से सत्याग्रह सीखा, सत्य अहिंसा से सत्याग्रह सीखा। सर्व प्रकार के भय का मोचन, सर्व प्रकार के भय का मोचन। सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन, लागे लगन, लागे लगन। सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन, सत्य अहिंसा में मन मेरा मगन।
Time magazine had listed out three most important protests over 190 years. The first one was the Boston Tea Party. The second was the Dandi March or the Salt Satyagraha. And the third one was the March of Washington. We can see a common thread. The first and second were against the same company, the East India Company. And there is a common thread of non-violence in all three. In 1930, with a pinch of salt, Mahatma Gandhi shook the world. He started out on 12th March from his Sabarmati Ashram in Ahmedabad in Gujarat for Dandi seashore with 79 fellow marchers, walked for 24 days, walking 10 miles a day, stopped at 48 villages, gave speeches in the morning and evening to inspire people to participate in the Salt Satyagraha, and covered 241 miles till he reached the Dandi seashore on 5th April. In the early hours of the morning of 6th April, when he bent down to pick up a fistful of muddy lump of earth with salt, 100,000 people joined him, and as the Salt Satyagraha progressed, 300,000 people broke the salt law all over India. 1,362 newspapers covered the news worldwide. Williams Lawrence Shearer, the American journalist, was present during the Salt Satyagraha, and his graphic reporting brought out the incidents of brutality and violence by the British colonial rulers to the notice of the world. And the world woke up to the power of non-violence and satyagraha. So Mahatma Gandhi remains the most powerful global brand ambassador of non-violence, and youth icon who opposed all forms of injustice, an apostle of peace and non-violence, a man whose values can make the world a better place today. In 1904 in South Africa, after reading John Ruskin's book Unto This Last, Barrister Mohandas Gandhi transformed his life and started leading a community life of self-control, voluntary poverty, bread labor, and welfare of all, or Sarvodaya. He established 4 ashrams in his lifetime, and 2 in South Africa and 2 in India. The last ashram that he established in India was the Sevagram Ashram. And these ashrams were his ideals of a non-violent face-to-face society for Sarvodaya, the welfare of all, and carrying out constructive programs, which is his second gift to humanity, the first being Satyagraha. Gandhiji's ashrams had a mingling of political and spiritual aims. It was a practical laboratory for transforming ordinary men and women into extraordinary satyagrahis, for offering the highest sacrifice in the freedom struggle on one hand, and to get involved in constructive programs to serve the poorest of the poor, to establish their self-respect and justice. I'm happy to inform you that I was born in his last ashram in Sevagram. My father was inspired by Gandhiji since his childhood and joined the non-violent freedom struggle in India, and my parents lived in the Sevagram ashram. For the next 5 decades, even after Gandhiji passed on in 1948, my parents and all of us have carried on walking on the path shown by Mahatma Gandhi to humanity. The life and thoughts of Gandhiji are intertwined and inseparable. His politics was imbued with his spiritual experiments, and his spirituality was tempered by his vision of a non-violent society. His constructive program was integral to his politics. The unique practices of Gandhiji, his control of the palate, his fasts, his spinning, his silence, and his prayer, gave him the internal strength. They were as much a part of politics as of his spiritual life. These practices and experiments were sustained and nurtured by the inmates of the ashrams that he founded. The ashram community, through its own practices, affirmed, modified, and validated Gandhiji's ideals and practices, and continues to do so even till today. This shows the relevance of his practices. He also carried out all his experiments in health and wellness through nature cure, diet control, hydrotherapy, sunbath, mud packs, and observing silence for one whole day in the ashram. Gandhiji has given 3 gifts to humanity, and that is Satyagraha, the first one, second one is constructive program, and the third one is Ekadasha Vrata, or the 11 observances, which were a set of rules for the ashram community for spiritual progress and voluntary self-control. Ivan Illich, the Croatian-Austrian philosopher, he came to Sevagram Ashram in 1978 and spent a whole week there. Every day he sat in Bapu Kuti, or Gandhiji's simple cottage, for a long time and said, and I quote, "This hut of Mahatma Gandhi demonstrates to the world how the dignity of the common man can be brought up. It is also a symbol of happiness which we can derive from practicing the principles of simplicity, service, and truthfulness." Now I'll play the Gandhi Katha hymn, which explains Gandhiji's philosophy of truth is God.
आँखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आँखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, सत्य ही है परमेश्वर बापू का बोल, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध, उसी परमेश्वर की नित्य कर तू शोध। आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल, आंखें पवित्र राख सत्य ही तू बोल। ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल, ईश्वर साक्षात होंगे अंतर टटोल।
Though Gandhiji's role and contributions to the political arena are well known, what is less known are his contribution towards health and wellness. Gandhiji was a firm believer in the principle that a healthy mind keeps the body healthy, and he stressed the importance of a healthy lifestyle and positive thinking. His interest in health, hygiene, nutrition, and diseases was as great as his interest in politics. He insisted that adopting preventive measures for diseases was better than treatment. He also said that it was important to focus on cleanliness, a controlled diet, and an exercise regimen, and that it was best to avoid overconsumption of medicines, especially those that were not required. He was a firm believer of nature cure and conducted experiments related to diet and fasting from his student days. He always believed that it was important to understand what caused diseases and then remove that very cause rather than falling ill and then attempting to treat it with excessive medication. Gandhiji was essentially a man of science. He approached problems in a scientific manner. Gandhiji's message to the world on the vital question of health and well being is very important. To him, the study of this question was part of the service to God and His creation, which was his mission. Knowing to care summed up his life. His message was simple and easy to follow. It encouraged everyone to respect simplicity, voluntary self control, reduce the wants, follow the tradition, culture, and the cultural practices and the values, follow the environmental credo and nature cure for living in harmony with nature. He advised that in order for keeping physically, mentally, and spiritually healthy, we should have perfect understanding of our bodies, which is made up of the five elements that are found in the nature. And that is what has been told by our ancient seers and sages. And these five elements are air, water, fire, earth, and space. For the wellness of our bodies, the balance and harmony between all these five elements is necessary. For Gandhiji, the outside universe was but a reflection of the inside universe. He repeated time and again that the universe is compressed in the atom. There's not one law for the atom and another for the universe. It was based on his actual spiritual experience that gave him the conviction that the moral principles have no meaning unless they can be made to serve as the guide of conduct in the daily affairs of man. The Sanskrit proverb Yatha Pinde Tatha Brahmande says, "You are the universe within the universe. As with the self, so is the universe. What is going on within you is same as what is going on in the universe." From the mind body perspective, Gandhiji's standpoint was health is an optimal integration of body, mind, spirit, soul, and environment. Environment is our extended body. There is a nice Vedic expression from the ancient Indian tradition which says, "As is the atom, so is the universe. As is the microcosm, so is the macrocosm. As is the universal body, so is the cosmic body. As is the universal mind, so is the cosmic mind." Yoga and meditation integrate all components of health, and Gandhiji was a strong believer in nature cure, Ayurveda, and Ashtanga yoga as well. His experiments with nature cure were always on himself. He also advised his friends and disciples to follow these remedies and treated and cured 30,000 patients through nature cure. Dr. Sherwood Eddy was a leading American Protestant missionary, a prolific writer, and an educator who visited Gandhiji in the Sabarmati Ashram in 1929 and wrote that Gandhiji's bodily presence is like that of Apostle Paul or Socrates. He said, and I quote, "He impressed us as the most childlike, the most transparent, the most lovable of man." His whole character is centered in his unique passion in truth and reality. Very few people know that as a couple, Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi contributed immensely 123 years ago to public health emergencies and service of humanity in South Africa and India. In the Spanish influenza pandemic of 1918, Gandhiji opened up his ashram as a quarantine center and treated and served patients through nature cure, provided simple vegetarian diet to boost immunity and maintain physical distancing. Gandhiji and Kasturba Gandhi took care of the families of the patients, looked after their physical, mental, and spiritual needs, gave them correct information for maintaining physical distancing and taking care, being positive through prayers, meditation, and chanting of Ramanama, and taking care of each other during the time of the Spanish influenza pandemic. Gandhiji had said on 10th November 1918, "Our ancestors could build such tough bodies in the past, but today we are reduced to a state of miserable weakness and are easily infected by noxious germs moving about in the air. There is one and only one really effective way by which we can save ourselves from them, even in our present broken state of health. That way is the way of self restraint, or of imposing a limit on our acts." In August 1942, Gandhiji had written a book called Key to Health, in which he wrote that anyone who observes the rules of health mentioned in this book will find that he has got in it a real key to unlock the gates leading him to health. He will not need to knock at the doors of doctors or vaidyas or the traditional health practitioners from day to day. Today, the world is facing three kinds of crises globally. First is the COVID-19 pandemic, which is causing immense physical stress and sickness and fear of death or existential crisis. The second is the serious and long drawn financial crisis, which is causing physical and mental anguish. And the third is the ecological crisis, which is impacting everyone. We have to look for answers somewhere within ourselves while learning from the life of Gandhiji. The lesson the pandemic is teaching us is simple. When one member of the family falls sick, the entire family is affected. And soon the community is affected, the nation is affected, and then other communities in other nations in this globalized world. The well being of one individual has an impact on people on the other side of the globe. This is true of every action of ours. What we eat, what we buy, what we think, and what we do has reverberations and repercussions on all life on earth. It is this Anubandha, this interconnectedness that sustains all life on earth. We are all in this together as one human family. And whether we choose to see it or not, we are living on the living in the same home, the same planet Earth, our Mother Earth. Our ancient sages and seers have always looked upon us as Vishwamanava or global citizens and said that the world is one family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The current COVID-19 pandemic is a wake-up call for every country, big or small, rich or poor, developed or developing. It has opened our eyes to the fragility of the existence of humans. We will have to learn to live with COVID-19 now and in the future as well. Instead of reinventing a new lifestyle, we just have to get inspired from the life of Gandhiji to make the necessary changes in thoughts, actions, and conduct for coping up and staying safe. Many lessons are very clear, and some are still unknown, surrounding us in uncertainty. This uncertainty is causing mental stress, anxiety, and fear of extinction and death, and the mass psychology of living in depression and grief is pointing out towards this fact in the current pandemic. We are collectively grieving for the loss of our known lifestyle. When a crisis makes you feel stressed, meditation, prayer, and chanting relieve the stress response. Fear and anxiety are forms of stress that become exaggerated when events become uncertain, when you feel a loss of control over the situation, and when the stress keeps repeating itself without let up. The thinking mind reacts to all these conditions. It always has. even in normal times. But a crisis brings stress into high relief, making it very capable of lowering the immune system of our body and causing inflammatory diseases. Decades ago, stress was classified as the epidemic of modern life. The Gandhian way of life is the best guide to practicing the coping mechanism that induces relaxation, calmness, inner peace, absence of anxiety, and for remaining positive. Therefore, Gandhiji stands before us as the greatest healer, a wellness and lifestyle guru for all times. The Gandhian principles of freedom from fear and care for all is a perfect prescription in the times of crisis. Gandhiji's emphasis on healthy lifestyle, empowerment for self care, and care in the community would make perfect sense. I once again take this opportunity to thank the Indian Mission for hosting the Gandhi Katha. My special thanks are to all of you who have joined me online. I will end with the peace benediction in Sanskrit for the universal welfare. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Let all be happy, let all be healthy, let all experience auspiciousness, let no one be overwhelmed by grief. Om Peace, peace, peace. With Gandhiji's blessings, who had said that peace is the only positive force which will lead us from darkness towards light, I will end the Gandhi Katha with the hymn Shubhamangal Ho. May there be auspicious good, may there be good, may the earth be auspicious, may the sky be auspicious, may every particle on earth be auspicious.
Thank you.